Hello, and welcome back to another episode recap where I'll lay out 5 things that I learned from my conversation with a historical expert. Today, we'll talk about the blockbuster depiction of the D Day invasion, 1962's The Longest Day. Now, if you're a regular listener to the audio version of the Based on a True Story podcast, you'll know that last year, in 2019, I had Marty Morgan on the podcast to talk about the historical accuracy of the things that we see in The Longest Day. Marty has spent decades researching the events depicted in the film. He's helped filmmakers and game developers work towards better historical accuracy and has authored a fantastic book on the topic called D-Day: A Photographic History of the Normandy Invasion. Well, that episode with Marty was almost an hour and a half long, so if you don't have the time to listen to the whole thing yet, well, that's why I'm here in this video to recap 5 things I learned about the movie The Longest Day from Marty Morgan. So let's get started. Number 1, the nations involved. Even though the movie does a decent job of showing a multinational coalition of forces landing on the beaches of Normandy for D-Day, as Marty pointed out, they still didn't show everyone. For example, there were Norwegians, Dutch, Belgian, even French soldiers on the Allied side landing on the beaches as they tried to retake their homeland from Nazi occupation. And that brings up another point that starts to complicate matters even more, because at that point during the war, the Germans had occupied France for years. So there were French nationalists involved on the German side as well. That means you have free French soldiers invading the beaches of Normandy, France, along with the Allies, and on the other side, wearing German uniforms, defending the beaches, there are also French nationals. Number 2, Pointe du Hoc. As I was talking with Marty, he told me that the movie exaggerated the way the 2nd Rangers Battalion reached the top of the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc. By that, what I mean is that they did not use grappling hooks and ropes like we see them using in the movie. Instead, what really happened was before the invasion began, the naval ships offshore bombarded Pointe du Hoc from about 5:45 a.m. to about 6:30 a.m. to weaken the defenses before boots hit the ground. As part of that bombardment, one of the shells from the battleship USS Texas fell a little short and hit the cliffs. That caused some of the ground to collapse and it formed a natural ramp. So when the Rangers landed, they landed within view of that ramp and they used it to get most of the way to the top. It got them to about 20 feet or so from the top. Number 3, the bell tower scene. If you've seen the movie, you know the scene that I'm talking about. Red Buttons plays Private John Steele, whose parachute gets caught on a bell tower. And as he's hanging there, the bell is ringing in his ear, and John is forced to watch helplessly as his comrades are killed, most before they even land. They're shot by the Germans in the town below, or they just land in nearby buildings that are on fire. Marty explained to me that even though it is true the real John Steele wrote a personal account of this happening to Cornelius Ryan, it was Cornelius Ryan who wrote the 1959 book called The Longest Day that the movie is based on. So it is true that Steele claimed that this happened, but in his 20 years of leading tours in Normandy, Marty has done extensive research into the story of John Steele, and he announced that the real evidence just doesn't add up. Now, this video is supposed to be a recap, so I can't really get into all the nitty-gritty details that Marty laid out. But if you want to hear Marty explain all the details of that evidence and the reason why he believes it did not happen, go listen to the full-length episode starting at about 23 minutes and 34 seconds. Number 4, Germans caught off guard. The movie shows the Germans getting caught off guard by the invasion. Marty explained that didn't really happen. Due to the size of the invasion force, there was a huge number of airplanes that had to take off and form up before they began flying from England to France. Those planes took off in waves. The first group of planes would take off and fly around as they waited for the second group to join them in the skies before they all flew across the English Channel. And even before the sun had set on June 5th, the Germans detected these large formations of aircraft assembling and had alerted the Luftwaffe. Of course, at that point, they thought maybe it was just a bombing raid. But then Marty told me that as the night of June 5th wore on, the Germans went from being cautious and being alerted about the possibility of something going on to getting confirmation. For example, shortly after midnight, these planes, there were hundreds of troop carriers, over 800 of them, and they passed over a German division that was stationed at Cotentin Peninsula. They passed over at a low altitude, so the Germans knew something was going on. Number 5, the German retreat. In the movie, we see the Germans frantically burning documents as they retreat from Normandy after the Allied invasion is a success. Marty explained to me that the HQ we see this happen in the movie was Erwin Rommel's headquarters, and those headquarters were some 50 miles or about 80 kilometers from the beaches where the Allies landed. But unlike what we see in the movie, the Germans didn't just give up after the D-Day invasion like the movie seems to imply. Instead, Marty pointed out that there was a 100-day-long battle over control of Normandy that saw thousands and thousands of lives lost, including over 25,000 civilians in the area. That's all for today, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode recap of 5 things that I learned from Marty Morgan about the movie The Longest Day. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the episode with Marty was well over an hour long, so we talked about a lot more than I've covered in this video. Marty went into great depth about the real history. For example, the evidence of why he thinks the church bell scene did not happen. So if you want to hear the full interview with Marty Morgan, go check out the audio podcast episode at basedonatruestorypodcast.com/134. Once again, that's basedonatruestorypodcast.com/134. Oh, and before I let you go, I'm happy to announce that I've got a special surprise for you for this year's D-Day anniversary for 2020. This year, I'm having Marty back on the podcast to talk about the historical accuracy of the movie Saving Private Ryan. So if you want to get notified of that the moment it's released on June 6th, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Thanks for watching.